Before coming to Congress, I was actually a small business owner from the mountains of East Tennessee, beautiful natural area. Hope you've been there and visited the mountains. And as a small business owner, I understand that the first thing you have to do is get customers in the door. And you also have to be able to have your fleet of trucks be able to travel, and you need energy to do that. I think we need to make sure that we have a policy in Congress that we allow small businesses to grow into big businesses. And if you put a cost on a small business, like increasing energy costs, I understand last January that oil was about $56 a barrel. It's up to about $114, $115 a barrel now, and we're becoming much more dependent on foreign oil. The people that I talk to in Northeast Tennessee want us to have access to American energy, and if we're going to do that, we need a policy that will allow us to use energy on federal lands. In my opinion, it's basically an effect in small business of supply and demand. If you have more of a product, cost will go down. If you limit a product, cost will go up. And I noticed in your testimony that right now, just pick the state of Colorado, that 77% of the production is not on federal lands. So that means that about 3/4 of the production is coming other than federal lands. If we had policies here that would actually allow for more use of American domestic produced energy, and we had a policy that was pro-growth for small business, do you think we could increase that production on federal lands and still have it in an economically and environmentally friendly way?
Congressman, yes, I think we can. What you see happening, I think, is that the state and private lands are easier to develop. And so the first ones to be developed have been those lands. They don't have the restrictions that we do with regard to federal. As those are depleted, and they will be, you're going to see more and more demand to do things on federal lands, I think. In fact, we're already seeing it. One of the concerns that I have, and I come from a ranching background, and I'm really concerned about the ability of small businesses, particularly rural businesses, to survive with these kinds of pressures. But one of the problems I believe we're seeing is that part of the pressure to develop the western lands is because we don't have access to some of the offshore areas. And somehow we need to find a balance so that as we go after energy resources, we do it based upon the areas with the least impact. And I'm not foolish enough to think that we're not have to develop all these areas. But when we throw all the pressure in just selected areas, it has an inordinate impact in those areas. So I think that if we had a more consistent energy policy with regard to oil and gas, we might, and we could start over, we might choose to have a more balanced process between onshore and offshore and try to look at those places where the impact might be less than it is in some of the areas that are now being developed. Given that we don't have that, given that we don't have access to some of those areas, we're trying to make sure that we try to do as much as we can to meet the U.S.'s needs and protect as much of the other values as we can. And it's not just fish and wildlife. It's a lot of cultural issues, a lot of other issues as well that I think are, for example, ranching life. I'm very concerned that we're going to lose that. And so we have to do what we can to perpetuate, I think, those lifestyles as well.
Could you quickly tell me about your best management practices?
I would be glad to. The best management practices are designed to encourage and sometimes demand state-of-the-art practices. And we require that those best management practices be applied across the board. And these have become more comprehensive over the last few years. In fact, they continue to evolve to be more comprehensive. And they're designed to make sure that that we use the best practices possible, not only in oil and gas development, but in other uses as well. And so I think they are what I've been encouraging. I think the states have a pretty or the federal government has a good set of those. What I am trying to do in talking with the governors of the western states is to make sure, encourage them to adopt the same sets of standards, and if the state and federal government require them, they will be applied to federal lands as well. So I think they go a long way to meeting some of the objectives that you and we have.